What's happening, guys? I'm Sean LeFloc, head performance coach at CrossFit Guthrie Beach. Today I'm going to be talking about some shoulder mobility to free up our overhead position, behind the neck position, and overall increase our internal rotation of the shoulder. So a lot of shoulder dysfunction will be created by poor movement patterns and by overuse of certain muscles on the anterior portion of the shoulder. In particular, we're talking about pec minor, but also anterior delt here. And what happens is, especially when we're talking about the sport of fitness, we have a lot of overhead movements. And if you look at the best of the best, when they're doing overhead movements, they're not struggling to get themselves into a static position. They're very easily getting overhead while being able to create a good midline, belly on, butt on. So what we need to do is free up that restriction. And how do we do that? We need to start loosening up some of the musculature in the front of the shoulder. It doesn't matter what necessarily muscle it is, it's just this area is stopping me from going overhead or going behind the neck. So I need to loosen that up and cause some relaxation in this chain while simultaneously increasing the strength in the posterior portion so that we can get some balance from front to back. So there's three mobilities that I like to do to increase that internal rotation of the shoulder. This will help in the behind the neck press, it'll help in muscle ups, it'll help in ring dips, and it'll start to prevent that hot shoulder that we get, that basically that biceps tendon, pec minor interface that kind of just rubs against each other like two ropes going against each other. So the first thing I like to do in any mobility or warm-up is I need to get that area with some blood flow. So I'll do things like arm circles front to back. I'll do some nice easy pass-throughs with the PVC, making sure that I'm taking the time to start to think about the area that I need to mobilize. So I'm not thinking about just whipping through this. I'm thinking about that specific spot of the shoulder, okay, that I need to mobilize, and I'm going to really focus on that area, getting into a good position, passing through, taking the time to really think about the position and the areas that I need to mobilize. So now that we have some blood flow to the area, now we can start to make some change. And the first thing I'll do is I'll do some self-myofascial release with a softball or lacrosse ball. I like the softball a little bit better because the height of it allows you to get into the areas that you need to. So rather than doing this on the ground, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of imagine myself against the ground and kind of see this better. So I'm going to take my arm first and place it behind my back by some internal rotation. So now my shoulder is internally rotated. What I'm going to do from here is I'm lying on the ground and I'm going to be rolling out the area in the front of my shoulder, basically starting in the pec here, all the way up into the anterior portion here, okay? And I'm going to free up all these areas. One other spot that I will then do is then I will start to increase the height of my hand as that shoulder starts to loosen up. So I'll get some self-myofascial release in here. I'll get that warmed up and I'll get that mobilized and I'll start taking up slack. One other area I like to also hit is right underneath the arm here. So I'll get into this area here that tends to be tight and a point of restriction as well. So I'll keep my hand up over my head and then I'll get inside over there. So I'll do that roughly 2 minutes per side, making sure that I'm hitting the areas that are tight. I'll take up the slack in that internal rotation as I start to loosen up. It's a great tool to use. I wouldn't do this necessarily every single day, maybe every other day, just because we don't want to pound those tissues nonstop. We want to allow it to relax, recover, regenerate. Okay? Then after I'm done with that, so I'll go pass-throughs. Then we'll go self-myofascial release with the softball. And then from there, we'll go to the rings. And I really like the rings because it challenges you not only in terms of your stability, of your range of motion, but also your stability too. So I have a set of rings here set up about a little higher than hip height. Most of the time people get on the rings in an improper position. So they'll get their elbows out and they'll kind of chill here. In anything that we do, we want to try to optimize our position. So I will get my shoulders into external rotation with the shoulders back. From there, now I start to slide the chest forward, and now I'm mobilizing the position that I need, the optimal position to mobilize, right? So we want the elbows in, we want the shoulder, and I'll show you this from the side, we want the shoulder in a neutral position. We never want to mobilize in a poor position. So that means if I have my elbows out and I'm like this, that's not going to do anything good for you. All you're really going to do is just create more irritation in the areas that are probably already irritated. So again, I'm going to excellently rotate my shoulders, keeping my shoulders relaxed down and back. And then from there, I'm sliding the shoulder forward, keeping the elbows tight to the side. Now I can just hang out in this position here, and I can probably mobilize this for about 2 to 3 minutes even. Contracting, relaxing, so I can contract the muscles, hold for 5, and then relax and try to get deeper into this. I can then start to get into an even deeper position by relieving some of the force from the ground, and then I can actually get into the bottom of the ring dip, and I can hold this for a prolonged amount of time. Again, pace yourself here. If you feel a stretch, just with your feet on the ground, chill there. If you start to increase, if you need to increase the stretch, then you start to pull some from the ground. The other thing we like to do is skin the cats. Again, bias external rotation. I walk out first, and then I start to walk myself back in. I keep the shoulder back, I walk my feet back in, and now I can hold this position here. You will most likely feel this in the chest. You can sink the hips down, you can contract, relax. You want to definitely stay in that external rotation so that we keep the shoulder in a good neutral position. Now, you will probably feel this also, not only in the shoulder, but also in the elbows as well. And that's a common thing, especially with people who have really tight anterior portions of the shoulder. All this is connected, okay? There's nothing that's really in a bubble. So if this is connected here, we're gonna try to get slack from anywhere possible, so the elbow is an area. And when we get those elbows out, when we're trying to do pull-ups and we can't get ourselves in a good externally rotated position, usually what happens is as soon as the shoulder dumps, then the elbow starts to get a lot of attention. And that causes that hot elbow in here and even on the outside as well. So it's not always about the weakness in position. It might be the fact that your movement patterns are off, which causes downstream effects. So the 3 things that I want you to work on are pass-throughs. We can start narrowing the grip there if needed. Self-myofascial release on the anterior portion of the shoulder. And then finally, doing some work on the rings, probably 2 minutes in a ring dip hold, and then 2 minutes in that skin the cat. And then test, retest. Take a bar, do a behind the neck press, see how it feels. Go through this 10-minute mobility, do it again, see how it feels. And there should be some kind of change, there should be an increase in range of motion. And if you do this stuff regularly, about 3 to 4 times a week, for 10 minutes at a time, that time accumulates, and then we start to create long-term change. Again, this is Sean LeBlanc, head performance coach at CrossFit Delray Beach. Train hard, everybody.